My name is Kirsten.
My name's Cheryl.
Welcome to KC Cafe Podcast. After supporting more than 900 families and still counting, we've realized we spent years doing the work, but not enough time sharing what we've done. This podcast is our commitment to changing that. We're chatting about education, politics, dyslexia, legislation, Jordan's Principle, families, First Nations, communities. We're not experts, we're just deeply connected, and we're ready to share what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change.
We've been doing these alternating episodes. One would be about something serious, right, and what we do in our business, and then the other one is something we do personal, right, because you have to have a balance of both.
Mm-hmm.
So this one we decided advocacy, I think, was something that's been the top of your mind for quite a while.
Yes.
So that's why we decided to do this one about advocacy. Has there ever been a moment where someone finally believed you and everything shifted? That's what advocacy feels like. And today we're talking about exactly that. We've spent years sitting across the table from families who were exhausted, dismissed, and told no. And we see what happens when somebody finally says yes. When the right person at the right moment hears what a family needs. Today we're talking about advocacy, what it actually means, what it takes, and those moments when it all clicks.
What does advocacy actually mean?
I was working and talking to teams in your education history. I always felt that I was alone. Like I was that island that went to the meetings as the only one on my side, and then there was 5 to 10 people on the other side. So for me, advocacy means someone that is by you, that is there to support you, to help with the facts, and to help get what you need as a family. That's what an advocate means to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think advocacy is, for me, being a dyslexic person, it's someone that supports me and makes me feel safe, and also just kind of connects that really scary world to maybe more reality of what's something that I can understand.
And that the reality to you is different than somebody else.
For
and
sure.
That advocate is there to make it be fair.
Yes.
For you to be successful in that environment.
Yeah.
Right? I think ultimately that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
When did you, I think you became an advocate very young.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think that you were an advocate?
I think we were talking about today, just even like my personality when I was younger and having to prepare myself for the day. Mm-hmm. And I think going to school, I had it in my head, like, okay, this is going to go this way and this is going to go that way. And I think when things didn't go the way I planned, how did I communicate that in a way that someone would listen, right? And I think at school, I had to kind of make those close relationships with my friends. And then, there was a lot of resource teachers that helped me that I would kind of get pulled aside, and so I felt like they were my support system and who would help me, right? That one-on-one time, I think I was able to kind of like see what I needed and communicate to them.
And they did advocate for you.
Yeah.
I will say that because, like, say when you're working with EAs or even parents who volunteered, they did become your advocates because they would say, Kirsten needs this, and they would communicate that to your teacher. So I think before we knew the word advocate, we had a lot of people on our team. Before we even knew that that's what it was, right?
I agree.
And one of the things that I learned, the difference between complaining and advocating, it's knowing what you're asking for, right?
For sure.
And I learned that very young, for you, like very early on in our journey with education, is that I would go in to complain that you couldn't read. And I didn't realize that I had to come in with the information and the knowledge to be able to advocate for you to get what you needed, because I, as your mother, collected all that data along the way, right? Yeah. And they didn't always see what you would come home like. And you were the perfect student throughout the day, right? You didn't complain. You were always, right? Teachers liked you. So for me, being an advocate, I had to stop complaining about what they weren't doing to what is it that Kirsten needs. And I started doing that by bringing coffee. So I'd bring coffee, I'd ask for the team, I'd bring coffee, I'd bring donuts, and I'd say, I know you guys have had a long day, thank you so much for staying. I brought you some coffee, donuts. And that right away changed the mood of the table. Like, that's what I found.
So why advocacy feels scary for many families? I think being like labeled or the fear of making it worse.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And I always go back to, we aren't labeling children. These are the diagnosis, right? Whether it's ADHD or dyslexia or, right, recently my son was diagnosed with diabetes.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to have the
path, like the ideas. I think a lot of those people too, they're psychologists. They are giving us the roadmap, the recommendations of what we need to do. Maybe start first, not all do things all at once. I think they want to break it down gradually so that we're starting somewhere, because I think that's where families feel lost. They're like, where do I start?
Well, I think there's that too, but I hear first and foremost always, I don't want to label my kid. I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we have to stop being scared of a diagnosis.
True.
It is what it is. Right?
Yeah.
It is what it is. How are we dealing with it, and how are we working together as a team child?
Right.
How are we doing that and putting all of our knowledge together to be able to give them the best chance at success? Right? So to me, it can't be based on fear. Like, this can never be based on fear.
Yeah.
And the fear I know some families have, and I hear often as well, is, well, if I go and ask, now they're going to think that I am the needy parent, or the parent that they have to like run away from in the hall because I'm asking for too much.
Yeah.
I think that every parent has to realize they are the only voice that will stand for their child year after year after year after year. And it's all about how you embrace it.
Yeah.
Are you bringing donuts and coffee?
Yeah.
Or are you going in screaming and yelling?
Yeah.
I think that will produce different results. So instead of being based on fear, what's their plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was also something we wanted to talk about, walking into a school to advocate for your child, and you've been told no before.
We're not doing that.
Right? Like, how do you make up the courage to go and try again, knowing that, like, oh, well, I've been said no before. What's going to make this different now?
Being told no, I was actually shocked. When I was told no, you couldn't get what you were entitled to, I didn't know what to say at first. And honestly, I didn't know what to say. And I didn't say anything, and I walked away and allowed that. I think that's why being an advocate for others has so much meaning for me, because there's never a no.
Yeah.
It's how do we make this happen, and how do we work together?
Yeah. Because, I think that's where, for me, like, the first time I think I advocated for myself, like, I was in elementary school, and that was, I think, where you are saying I was advocating for you, but I didn't know what to say. I know there was a problem. I know Kirsten was coming home angry. I was, like, literally at school holding it in all day, come home, and I'm like a bomb that exploded, and I'm just freaking out, and I'm emotionally stressed, and I would say, like, my nervous system was like trying to relax, and then having dinner. By the time it's already like in the evening, I'm like, okay, I'm calm now. That took a lot.
That was an emotional, the cost for you was a lot of emotional anxiety. I remember when you were little, you used to lie a lot to your friends. And I don't know if they come and they knock on the door and say, Kirsten said this, is that true? And I'd sometimes say, no, that's a lie, or yes, that's actually true, because I feel like you had to make up stories and things to be able to convince people to do things for you. I don't know if that was what you thought back then.
I don't know.
But that's kind of how I saw it. I wonder what Kirsten was trying to convince of someone to do.
Or to realize, or to think about,
Yeah. Do you feel like you had to become an advocate to survive school?
Yeah, like, I think in elementary, I think I was just always like, there's a problem, we're fixing it, you're gonna do your intervention, I think school always tried to manage it, but I was just mad. Like, I was just upset. And like I said, coming home feeling upset, having that, I think you had to be my advocate for a while. So I don't think I was advocating until I was able to see the change, right? I was like in probably like grade 8, grade 9 is when I started to realize, like, oh, what I'm doing in tutoring is actually helping me, and I don't feel so stupid anymore, and I actually can read this, and I can write this, and I feel like I can be independent, whereas before it was just like such a dark state of thing. Like, I couldn't improve. I didn't know what to do.
It was
So,
true. I think the things that I see, and what the word that came to mind was that I convinced the schools to do, right? Like, cause that
Yeah.
was 20, 21 years ago.
yeah,
And when I still look back and I say that was the things that I convinced the schools to do. And when I look back now, I go, geez, that wasn't something I had to convince or should have convinced,
Yeah.
right? Like, that was your right.
mm-hmm.
And you just allowed me to direct that
yeah,
and follow the lead, but you didn't complain about it,
mm-hmm.
right? That's one thing that I was grateful for, that
Yeah.
whatever I got them to agree to do, you did embrace.
Yeah.
And that isn't always the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like, I know a lot of, like, in school, like, I think if you you were telling me, okay, you're doing this at school today, or you're gonna be doing this, like, I think I had an idea of what that was like. So when I would go to school and they would pull me away for assessments, or they would put me in these, I did have, like, why are we doing this? Why am I getting pulled away? Like, what's going on?
You knew that wasn't the plan.
Because I knew that wasn't the plan of the day, but then over time, I started to get used to that, of getting pulled out every year. So then when I didn't get pulled out, I'm like, where is the person that's supposed to pull me out? Like, I kind of just accepted that, and I knew that in class, I wasn't reading well. I was embarrassed when someone would say, hey, read this or do this. I would be like, I'm not reading this. You know, my friend would do it for me. So I would, like you said, I kind of lied to convince people to do things.
Yeah.
I think that was where I was trying to convince them for certain things that I needed.
Yeah.
And I was advocating for myself without realizing it, not to adults, but to the people, my peers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they were helping me the most. Whereas the teachers were just kind of like, oh, Kirsten behaves so well in class, you don't really stick out.
Yeah. Because you were doing everything in the back end.
Yeah.
Like, you were figuring out things on your own by connecting with your peers.
Yeah.
And whether it's the truth or a lie.
Yeah.
Because I remember you always said, I need glasses, I can't see.
Yeah.
And I think that was a way that you got people to read for you early on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What was it like advocating when the system kept pushing back?
There was a lot of pushback. Like, at the beginning, because I didn't know the language. Like, I didn't know what I was supposed to ask for, and I didn't know what your rights were.
Yeah.
So I didn't use the right words that would trigger that help.
Yeah.
I just knew I had a psych assessment and you required certain things, but I didn't know the words to use to actually, I don't want to say make them,
Yeah.
but get it done.
Yeah.
I honestly, like, I always had such a front of calm and cool and collected in the meetings, but I would leave and cry in the car. Like, I was so frustrated. I felt so bullied. Everyone kept telling me I was wrong and that I was asking for too much and that they didn't have the time or the money to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not allow it because, right, my mom's a teacher. I knew that I know what she does for her students. I know what her schools have done in the past.
Yeah.
So I knew that it wasn't an over the top ask.
Yeah.
It took so much out of me emotionally to stay composed, and I cried, I don't know how many, after every meeting for sure.
Yeah.
Like, every meeting.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's, like, how it shaped you as an advocate today, right? And how you help families today.
That I didn't want another family to have to go through what I go through and cry in the car.
Mm-hmm.
That is what my goal was. Like, I was like, I will not allow on my watch a family, a mom, a dad, parents to cry in the car after.
Yeah.
Because it was so horrific.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want that to be that for anyone else.
Aha moments is when something finally makes sense, when you find the right words, and when someone finally listens, and when you stop doubting yourself. What was the moment you realized when you knew you knew more than the people in the room?
And when we were right before we recorded this, we were like, no, we're going to keep it in.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're going to keep it in is because I had to become an expert to be able to find the words that would get action for Kirsten in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to become the dyslexia expert
Yeah.
to be able to get to know what she needed. So knowing more in the room about dyslexia, right? When Kirsten, right, we talked about this already, where she said, well, people, right, dyslexia doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it didn't exist, it's that people in Manitoba didn't know about dyslexia, and they never learned about it, and it wasn't included in their curriculum when they became teachers. So it's not that it didn't exist, it's just that we hadn't taught our teachers, right?
Right.
So knowing more about dyslexia, that's where I always say this is our lane.
Yeah.
Our lane is dyslexia. Our lane is working with, I think we've passed 900 students. Right, thousands and thousands of families we talk to at this point, and educators. And I think it's really important now, being an advocate, knowing to the best of my ability what and how to help based on dyslexia.
Yeah.
Right, that's the important part for me, to be able to say what's needed by evidence, by the gathering the science behind it. How is it that we can help? The experience we've had at the center.
Yeah.
That's the knowing.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to communicate to the team, parents, schools, right, everyone who's working with that student.
For sure. Was there a moment when a family you supported had their aha moment and you got to witness it?
I see it all the time, thankfully, because I go and I volunteer to be the advocate for school meetings. I noticed after the second or third time, I didn't have to be there anymore. Like, I would go with the mom and the dad, or just the mom or just the dad, or whoever that worked. And I would, typically the first meeting is I would lead it. We'd go the next year. We would kind of share, parents and I, about what needed to know. And then usually by the third year, the parents were leading it and saying what they needed, what their child needs.
Yeah.
And they're able to communicate in a way that actually takes action. That makes me so happy to see that.
Right. Has there been a moment where you were the one who changed, where you realized you've been wrong about something?
I don't ever think that I have to be right. Like, that is not something that I have ever had to claim. I am okay with being wrong. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, being an advocate or someone that goes into meetings with students and families and representing I want to say dyslexia, right? Yeah. Is that we all have to be open to what is going to help that child. And I'm good with being wrong all day, as long as we can make sure that student gets what they need. Happens. And we learn all the time. Like, when we work with students, I may have thought that, for example, technology, right? This student should do no reading and writing by hand at grade level, right? That it should be technology. And what I've learned over time is that some students don't want the technology because nobody else is allowed it in the class. Right. And they're the ones that end up getting teased. Well, how come John got to use technology and we can't? And they don't want to be pointed out. Right. So many times it's about what does that student or child need, because it is for them. Right. My opinion and what I think they need isn't necessarily what they need. You have to have those conversations with families and with kids.
What did that feel like when you had that, like, that school meeting where they did listen?
The first time, one of the issues we had in this province at the beginning was families would say, because I never wanted to surprise the school in the meeting, I always said to the parent, please set up a meeting, the date, time, but mention that I will be there. Okay. Right? Yeah. Cheryl, she's right, this is who she is, and she's going to be there as our advocate. And they said no at the beginning. So we had to dig out the Manitoba laws that you are allowed, that is your legal right to be able to have an advocate. And we haven't had a no for a decade. Right. Right. So now we know how to word it and to ask for those meetings, and that it is always a yes. Right. So it's nice now that we know the language to use and the laws within this province. So, Kirsten, I think one of the things that, right, you had said earlier about advocating for yourself, you started to at a certain point. When you so it took about 6 or 7 years to do the intervention. What was the moment that it clicked for you to become your own advocate?
I think it was when I was already, like, in high school. I was starting to advocate. I remember one year I was like, I'm good. I want to do it. I want to be the one that asks the teachers for what that test, if they take a test, what does that look like? Because I was kind of already used to that and what that looked like. But then there was teachers where I would ask for those accommodations, or I'd ask for extra time or a quiet space, and they would just be like, no. Yeah. So then I would be challenged with, oh, I don't think I've ever been told no before.
I remember that. I think it was grade 10 or 11, and you had
Yeah.
said, Mom, can you please stop talking to the student
Mhm.
services teacher? I got it. Like, I know what I need, and I'm okay with asking for it. So I was like, okay, I won't have that meeting at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you said to me. You're like, I asked for more time, and they actually said no. And I want to be clear. She asked for more time because that was all she needed.
Right.
Because her literacy, her reading and spelling were at and above grade level. So all you needed was more time.
In a quiet space.
In a quiet space.
Yeah.
And before then, it wasn't just that.
No, I couldn't even read the question on the test.
Yes.
Yeah, I couldn't even write what I needed to be in my head. I was like, I don't even know what I'm writing.
And I think that's what gave you confidence because the literacy wasn't an issue anymore.
Yeah.
You could do those things on your own. What you needed now was more time in a quiet space.
It wasn't as complex of what I was asking for.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I felt like it was something where I was like, well, this is something not as complex. I could get this space. I don't see why not.
And I remember you coming home and being surprised. Like, they said no. And then I called the student services teacher and I said, Kirsten was in, right, that's class. And they said no. So she talked to the teacher and the teacher's like, oh, I didn't know Kirsten had dyslexia. She seems so smart. And I said, and I always, I always pause and take a breath. And I said, that's part of being dyslexic. You have to be smart. So I always wanted, and I said to the students' teachers, I said, please communicate with that teacher. Yes, she's smart. That's part of being dyslexic. She should have asked, why do you need more time? Why do you need a quiet space? Because Kirsten would have explained that.
Right.
So the teacher did, I don't know if the teacher apologized to you. I know the student services teacher, that was the end of it. You didn't come home and say you needed anything else for that year.
Yeah, it was figured out and it was,
Yeah. But I think that being told no, we can't just stop there.
Right.
And I think that happens often, right? And parents have to be part of this journey and leading this journey because they're the ones who are going to have to be the communicators for school when no's come.
That's right. And even I find advocating for tests, there's a couple times where I showed up to some exams and they're just kind of pushing you, filing you into the big room. And I'm like sitting at the desk with everybody and I'm like, there was one time I didn't say anything. I just sat at the desk and I tried to do the test. I failed.
Yeah.
I couldn't read any of the stuff on the test. I couldn't write. I had to write like half a page. I had to read an article and then do a summary about that. And I just left. I didn't even finish it. And I felt so like I was mad because I was like, that's not fair and I should have said something. And I felt bad I didn't say anything. Yeah. And then I was like, I'm never going to do that again. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to put myself in that situation because...
And you didn't, because I don't know how many texts I got. I'm sitting in the room, writing the test like everyone else. And then I'd call the student services teacher. She'd run to the class and she'd be like, Kirsten needs to come out. So it would be like a substitute teacher or someone that forgot. So we were very, and I still am very grateful that the team that Kirsten always... high school team of Kirsten was always very receptive to what do you need? Yeah. And if they made mistakes, that's okay. Like we were never upset that someone forgot because they always fixed it, but they were open to hearing that.
That's right.
That's what I cared about the most.
And they fixed it, right? They kind of
fixed it.
That's right. So the moment rejection from a school turned into the beginning of something bigger.
That was the very first time, and I know I talked about this in another podcast, and it was about when you first got your diagnosis, and I was so happy because we had a plan for you. I sat down with a room of 10 people, and this is how we're going to help Kirsten gain her literacy, and here's the plan, and she needs, adapted learning plan, and then they made me feel crazy, that I was wrong, and that test from the psychologist was wrong. And that the resource teacher and the principal, and we don't believe these results. And I didn't, at the time, again, right, I didn't know the words to say dyslexia and diagnosis aren't a belief. Like it isn't a religion, you don't have to believe in it. It is an actual medical diagnosis. And I didn't have those words then. Yeah. I was so mad. That's actually what made me open the center. Yeah. Right? That rejection was like, I may be a mom, because that's what I was told. Well, you're just the mom. We're the educators. And I was so intimidated by that. And when you started to gain success in literacy because of the program we were using, I was like, forget this.
Yeah.
We're opening a center because what I experienced at school was not okay.
Yeah.
And we have to do it different for Kirsten. And then I opened the center. Like, that's what made me.
Yeah. You were so mad.
I was so
you
mad.
Just did it.
I opened the center. Yeah.
Good job, Mom.
Mm.
So the moment you realized dyslexia wasn't a limitation, it was just a different way of learning.
And I think that we've talked about this too, right? We hear all the time about dyslexia is a superpower.
Yeah.
I appreciate that statement, but I also think that there are problems with that statement. And I don't mean it in a negative way.
Yeah.
I mean that I'll just pose this to you.
Yeah.
When you were significantly behind, right, grade 6, and you're 3-4 grades behind with reading and spelling, did you feel like it was a superpower?
No. I was like, I'm not going to school. You can drag me to school. I think I said something like that. Like, you can make me.
I could never have convinced you it was a superpower because every
struggled.
day you were put in a position where you couldn't do what everybody else could in that class.
Yeah, I felt insane. I felt like it was never going to get better. It was a dark, depressing.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
So I think that saying dyslexia is superpower, I could convince you of that after when you had literacy.
Exactly. You can convince me now. I'm like, yay, now. Yeah, I'm, because I have that.
Yeah, but I think we have to be very careful about, yes, we have to give kids their self-esteem and their self-worth and all that, but you can't just say with words and saying, yeah, it's a superpower.
Yeah.
That has no meaning to someone who struggles every day.
Right.
We have to help with the thing that is difficult, whether it's therapy, reading or spelling intervention, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whether it's I have doubts of my self-worth when we talk to someone who's a therapist. But we have to be able to deal with those things.
That's right.
We can't just out of the gate say it's a superpower because it's not fair to our kids. It's not fair.
And I think a lot of families come from different places, different classes too, right? Like I think we had, where I got the diagnosis and we found out that we had the disability tax credit. So it was right away that I was able to, we had that support to be able to fund my tutoring. Where I think a lot of family members, like that tutoring, that's an extra income or an extra expense you have to provide for your family.
You can't just afford. Yeah.
So I think some families that's like, okay, yeah, that financial, that's not an issue. Okay, so you can get this things that you need to be successful. But a lot of families that don't have that, it's not easy for them. It's not fun for them, and they're stuck in that situation. Yeah. How do we help them, right? And I think that it's just what's your background? Who supports you?
Yeah.
I think I am very fortunate to have a very strong support system that were able to help me, and I think that's what we do as well as advocates is support the people that maybe don't have the support because we're here for you to lean on.
And that's I think a good point too, right? Like that's what we built is when you don't have the accessibility to whatever that barrier is, right? That's what this whole podcast is about, right? Is
100%. Barriers.
How do you then help? Because we may know of a place that can fund or a place that you can apply to or resources that you have that inability to access what you need, call someone who's an advocate who's doing that because there may be things that you didn't know about, right?
Yeah.
I think this is an important part too, like realizing that no from one person didn't mean no from everyone. 19 years hoping schools would do something different. It's been 19 years and it hasn't been different. I hear no. But I said I don't hear no about the meetings. What we hear no about still is we don't have the resources, we don't have the money, we don't have the time. We hear that all the time. That is not acceptable. It isn't acceptable. This day and age where we have the use of technology, the use of programs, the use of funding bodies, our budget in Manitoba is, I don't know if anyone looks at the frame budget, I think this year it was $3.16 billion that we have from our province into education.
Right.
I cannot look at that number and say, what do you mean you can't supply a technology or a person or some time? I don't accept that.
Right.
So I think it's really important for families to be able to, wherever you are, whatever province, whatever state, whatever country you're in, what are the budgets of your school? What are the resources? What are the things that you have the legal rights to? It's so important to know so that you can advocate for your child appropriately.
That's right. So tell me about one moment where something shifted, where you, a family you supported, finally got what they needed.
Now knowing that language.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more families that I think we were like after that school meeting, we're like, okay, great, like that was awesome. Whereas before we were like, whoa, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
So I think we're more like optimistic about that partnership, because I think what has to happen at yearly is you're communicating before school starts. You know, you're talking to school a lot, and you know the receptionist, they know your first name.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, we're talking on a day-to-day basis, even weekly, right?
I think that's a very good point, because I always knew the receptionist's name or the principal's name, or right, and I always thanked them for taking the time for my child, because I know they're busy.
Yeah.
I am always and will always be grateful to the people that this is their job,
Yeah.
and that they take that time. And I
100%.
think that's how we were able to see. I go back to convincing, and that shouldn't be the word, but that's the word that pops in my brain.
Yeah.
Is that you become that parent and that family and that support system, or part of that wheel that helps, right? And to be kind to everyone in many ways, right? Even if it's a hello or how are you, or right? Like, I think it's really important to make that connection with your team.
That's right.
And to have communication. I think that is so important.
Yeah. So what does advocacy look like in practice? So you don't have to be loud to advocate. Sometimes it's just showing up again and again and again.
And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Is that you get to know your school, your team, who those people are. Like, when I advocated for Deontay, it was very different when I advocated for you, because I knew how to ask for what Deontay needed.
Yeah.
But I was so grateful, and I said how grateful I was to them, and I really, really, really am, right? Am still.
And Deontay's dyslexic, and he's totally, like, we've had conversations, and the way that I went to elementary has been very different than when he went to elementary. And even in high school, he's like, I think I for sure like loved it for social. Like, I think that high school for me was like connecting, and okay, yeah, I'd listen and understand that. But I think Deontay, he has a good social group too, but also I think education and like going to class and understanding that wasn't hard for him. And they're actually, the classroom norm is to have a laptop.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was in the class, like, it looked weird that I had a laptop, you know, or wanted to use any type of technology. And I just had to be like, I'm using it because if I don't use this is going to take me forever, and that's not fair.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the other things is knowing your rights.
Right.
Is advocacy. Knowing, right, Manitoba right now has the right to read.
Yeah.
We've had many conversations about that.
Yeah. Like, they're acknowledging the right to read. You know, we're acknowledging that dyslexia.
I take a sigh and I take a breath, because I think the intentions are always good for why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Right? Why our province does what it does. It has the right to read has good intentions. It really does. I really do believe that.
It's acknowledging.
It is acknowledging. But parents, please, just because the right to read in the province of Manitoba is there, it does not mean it works. It is just starting. They're making decisions about how that's going to run, how it's reported to you, if it's reported to you at all. So know it exists, but please ask questions. Please ask what tests are done, because division by division, they're doing it differently. What are they doing about it when your child is struggling? What is the plan? They do not have to tell you that. There is no plan to communicate that to us now. Please, parents, know your rights so you can advocate early.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put links below there for you to check out.
The power of documentation.
Yeah.
We talked about it with knowing what you need to be able to say the right words to schools or to your team, but it's also important for parents. The power of documentation for yourself. You need to keep records. You need to have emails, names, dates. It's really important when you're asking for things that you have it in writing, right? Whether it's an email, and you need to start your own file.
Yeah.
So that file, Kirsten, I think, has 2 thick files from I don't think I've ever shown you. I was actually just putting them in this filing cabinet, but I kept them. But all of the paperwork that you have is so important for you. Like when I would go to meetings for Kirsten, I put an agenda that I printed for everyone out because I wanted to make sure that what I was talking about was there and not passed over. You need to keep those records so that you can communicate that from year to year to year. When to escalate and how, staying factual, not emotional. Even when you are emotional, I always went in knowing the answer was going to be no. And I had to make sure and calm myself enough to be able to not have a tone and not be upset, right? I had to really kind of figure out what that was for me to go in a meeting. And for me, it was always being prepared.
That's right.
Right? Having all the paperwork, having the agenda, having those things there for you, for me. But I also knew that if I was told no, I wasn't accepting that. So then it's going to the appropriate bodies.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, exactly. So who to call when you hit a wall?
And that's just exactly that part, right?
Yep.
Who do you call? You talk to resource. Okay, well they didn't. I remember my sister was trying to get a cumulative file. The resource said no. Actually.
Yeah.
The law says that you have 24 hours to get a copy of that to the parent, right? It is our law and within our rights as parents to get that file. And so, right, so she ended up sending an email to the principal and said, I was told no. I would like within 24 hours that done, and she quoted the law, and she had it right there in the email, and the principal delivered to her door the next day, right? So it's really important to be able to know, and if that didn't work, then you go to your school division, you go to, right, and then you
your
just
superintendent.
Try always to work it out within your school in a way that is not emotional or rude. Being rude
doesn't get anything.
Anyone, anything.
Yeah, and I think also with the in Manitoba, we also have. I know for me when I was younger, I was in a lot of programs at school, and you didn't know about it. There was, I think, it was very, I think, upsetting to you and surprising that they made you seem crazy, that I wasn't dyslexic, and yet they had all those documents, tests, assessments done. How did you feel about that? Like, knowing
I didn't know that you could have access to Cunify. Like, I didn't know that until you went into from grade 8, you were going into high school, grade 9, and the principal called me in and had said, hey, Kirsten's cum file is very large, cumulative file is very large. I don't want to dispose of it because a lot of it seems really important. Can you come to school and we'll look at it together? What is it that you want to keep? What do we send to high school that's applicable now? So I sat down with him and I was like, thank you so much. I didn't know that I could look at this with you. And he is the one actually who told me back then that you could. And that's exactly what happened is I went through documentation that before the very first meeting when I was told I was wrong and they didn't believe, they'd actually done the same tests and that it was the same results as the psychologist. So they did have the same results. Now knowing that, I always advise parents to look at the cumulative file so they are prepared for what has actually happened without them knowing. And I think it's really important because we all need to be on the same page. We're all on the same team, right? How do we share information and communicate if we don't know all the facts? Right?
So what is the single most important thing a parent can do before walking into a school meeting?
Be prepared. That is the single most thing. Be prepared. Have your, like I said, an agenda, have the documentation, have what your expectations are, know the language, have an advocate, have all of those things in place. Talk to your child about what it is they will allow I say allow,
Yeah.
because you can do all the accommodations and have, right, the advocacy, but if your child isn't willing to accept those, then you've just wasted your time.
Yeah.
So please, before you go into these meetings, talk to your child.
What's the problems? What could
What's
change?
hard for you in school?
Yeah.
What does your class look like? And then you're more informed about what to ask for in those meetings. So be prepared. That's my top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you wish families knew earlier before they're already in crisis?
That I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I think parents have a very good intuition
Yes.
that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to follow that intuition, talk about it to your school, but document it.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure that you have those meetings, talk about it. If they say everything's fine, based on what?
Mm-hmm.
Is it your opinion or a test that you did? Now that we have the right to read in Manitoba, can I please see those tests?
Yeah.
I may not know what they mean, but can we please sit down and go through them? And can you please help me go through and understand what these results mean? That is your right. And I think parents need to follow their instinct. We had talked about it this morning before this.
Mm-hmm.
I did not, and I was not an educator, that was my mom, right? I'm not a professional teacher, I am not a psychologist, computer analyst programmer, that was my profession, right?
Yeah.
I was taught to analyze things, that's probably why this is a perfect fit, because I continue to analyze things.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I suspected that Kirsten, right, was struggling, I didn't believe my own intuition because I wasn't a teacher. Parents, you know your child best.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel something is up with reading and spelling, believe it. Don't shove it off.
Yeah. Don't wait.
Don't wait. Talk about it. And if teachers say it's fine, no, it's not, get the evidence. Ask them to do norm standardized tests.
Yeah.
Ask them, right? Ask them. Talk to your advocate. Reach out. There's no harm in reaching out.
Yeah.
Ask questions so that you are prepared early. Yeah. The families that go the furthest are not always the loudest. They're the ones who come back, who write things down, who ask the question a second time and a third. Advocacy isn't a single moment. It's a practice. You're always doing it, working, getting better at it. Practice.
Yeah. I think every year is another chance.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why do they need it? And why is it their right? Name the injustice clearly. This is about human rights, not just convenience. So why do parents and educators often not understand why accommodations are important? What are the most misconceptions?
I think with parents, it's the assumption that your teacher or that team
Mhm.
knows about dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about this province is, we've said this before, teachers don't learn about dyslexia specifically. So it may be that the team in your school just doesn't know about dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't understand how difficult it is for our children, especially at the beginning, when they haven't had an intervention. Our kids are smart enough, say for grade 5 curricular outcomes, right? They're smart enough. They can't read or spell grade level text. That's the issue.
Yeah.
And I don't think people who don't struggle with language or literacy don't understand what a challenge it is for someone who does. They just don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I think that's for educators. I think for parents, the assumption is that the educators know about dyslexia. I think, right?
That's right.
Educators don't understand the difficulty the student has, and parents don't understand the educator doesn't know about dyslexia. If that makes sense?
That's right.
Right? The difference between what a written test measures versus what a student actually knows. Why is that gap so significant for dyslexic learners? When a student who's dyslexic is reading and writing a test, it's a measure of their literacy ability.
Yeah.
It's not knowing about that subject. So one of the things I say always is, as an advocate, is always, if you want to know what John knows about science, ask him.
Yeah.
Because that will be the best way to be able to get to know what John knows about science. If you ask John to sit down and read a test and write the answers, you are testing his ability to read and spell. It's as basic as that, is it not?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And how much time and energy does it take a dyslexic student to spend decoding that test itself before they even get to show what they know?
And we're talking about a student who's already had intervention.
Yeah.
Because students with dyslexia that have not had an intervention cannot decode. Maybe a little bit, depending on their visual memory.
Yeah.
But they don't have a phonemic awareness ability. They don't have the decoding ability. So the energy it takes for them to guess if they're right is
It's exhausting.
massive drain.
Well, and I think that's why I was so exhausted by the end of the day.
Yeah.
There was times too where I'd come home, go to bed, because I was so mentally exhausted from all of that.
Yeah. And you don't have the ability to read those words, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. It's not, if you have to read something for information and then write down what you know, that is what a dyslexic student cannot do before intervention.
That's right.
You were able to do that in high school because you had an intervention which you were able to decode. You just needed more time and a quiet space, right?
Yeah.
Very different times within your process and your journey of learning literacy.
That's right. And even I think in post-secondary was totally different experience. Like I was able to use technology. I was comfortable with it. So I was able to like have that voice to text or have it read it to me and listen to it. And that was how I learned by listening to it.
Yeah.
And earlier on, I think I had to accept that listening to it was the same as reading, right? Like just because you're reading it and I have to listen to it, I'm still understanding that. Now I like to write. Like I like to listen to things and then think about it and then write stuff. Like I love writing manuals and processes because I'm like, it makes sense.
But you can now because
that's right.
you have the ability. You are a good reader and a good speller, right? So that is a choice to you.
Yeah.
For someone who doesn't have an intervention, that isn't an option.
That's right.
Yeah. I know we were talking about a specific student that you had.
Yeah.
That had the aha moment during tutoring. You're working and you were tutoring. And they finally understood why a written test wasn't fair to them. Do you remember that situation we were talking about it?
Yeah, I think I have these conversations a lot with students because they're starting to realize that, okay, they're using our plans, they're using the way that we're teaching them how to read and spell, and then they're trying to use that in the class. They're trying to use that, and then they're like, but everybody's going so fast. How am I able to keep up doing it this way that works for me? How do I ask for that extra time? How do I ask for that quiet space? How do I, right? And I think that was where the student was saying like, I just accepted now that like we've asked for it, we've asked for quiet space, we've asked for extra time, they're not doing it. And I think that that's where I was trying to share my experience of, I've been told no. I've been having teachers say no and sit back down at your desk and do what you're told. And that made me feel sick. I did not feel good about that. And I said, if you have a feeling of that did not make me feel good, say something to your parents, right? Because you do not need to suffer in silence to make them feel better. Like, this is your learning. This is your life. It's really hard, I think, for kids to ask for that because we're just kids and we just need to respect and just obey. And I think that that's where, as long as we have that tone that you were saying, right? If we are coming from a place of trying to be as clear as possible in the less amount of words, I think that's where if you ask for it, they said no, tell your mom. Talk to your parents.
When you said talk to your parents, what did that student say? Like, was he willing to do that?
I think he was already kind of like, I talked to my mom about it and we're like, my mom's going to talk to them. But because it was already the end of the year, he was kind of like,
nothing's going to change.
Nothing's going to change. I told my mom, we're going to talk about it. And I said, well, we advocate, like we can volunteer and talk to your school. And he was like, okay, I'll tell my mom. Right? I think within lessons, I always try to advocate and teach, well, how do you use speech to text, right? Like, you know, I'm a PC person and we use Microsoft, and Microsoft is really accessible. And I think that's where I've been kind of teaching them, hey, speech to text, press this, boom, boom, boom. Okay, now open up your notepad and just speak into the notepad. Or, hey, you got your phone, open up the notes, speak into it, and then worry about editing after.
Did you, when you did say that, and when you do see that to
Yes.
students, do they realize all that wasted time and energy of them trying to read with their eyeballs?
I think that I think a lot of them are trying to make it work. They're trying to force it to make it be how like everybody else is. And my point is like, don't compare yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody comes from a different place. I think that if you are willing to accept that you have to learn different, like that's I think the first step is accepting that, you know what, things aren't gonna be the way that everybody or conventionally however it should be.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? You get to decide what it gets to look like. You get to decide what it should be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where a lot of accommodations, some of them work and some of them don't.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's what you said. We have to kind of talk to the students to say, well, did that actually work?
Yeah.
Hey, we had a meeting and we set up all this, you know, we had a great meeting. Is that helping? Because I've heard many times we've had parent meetings and then we talk about it and we're like, yeah, none of those accommodations was applied that year.
It wasn't used,
Was it
or
used?
it wasn't used by the teacher or by the student.
That's right.
Right? And I've been to many of these meetings, and the teacher will say, well, they have an iPad. They can take it whenever they want.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what does your class look like? Is that something, does your classroom norm? Do most kids go and have a tablet? She said, no. I said, so why would that one student go and pick out that tablet? Kids try so hard to fit in, especially when you're different. Why on earth would they want to go and be different and pick up that tablet and then speak into it in front of the class? That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to be also very realistic about what is the environment, what are we willing to do, and what are we willing to change to make sure that that's fair. And I cannot stop talking about how it is not fair, because we're getting them to do something that they cannot do. We haven't taught them yet. Right?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm just remembering this other story here where, you know, I did go to a private school and I really struggled within, I think it was social studies, and it was tough. Like a lot of those words, I'm like, I'm not even gonna, and that was just me starting my journey with tutoring. And so I was already really uneasy about that. And then the fact that like maybe, 15 years later, we had another student that went to that school.
Oh, with the same teacher.
And I went to that parent meeting and it was the same teacher at the meeting and she knew that it was me. So I don't know, I just stayed calm and collective, shared my experience with that student, shared the things, what we're working on, what could they work on with, and how they could do it in class. I advocated for speech to text and how do you teach them how to use technology and the importance of teaching that. And I think at the end of the meeting, I was like vibrating because I was like, I can't believe it was the same teacher. And I had the opportunity to show and prove to that teacher, look at me now. You know, I advocated for myself in grade 7. I'm here 15 years later. I'm still advocating. And I felt like that was like, so.
That was
like,
your like full,
moment.
Like that full going back in time. And I remember getting in the car with you after, and you were so shaken up because it had so much meaning for you, because you felt exactly the same way. So you knew how that student felt. But you were able to advocate for that student in a way that the teacher could understand. Right? And I think that was so important to be able to do that.
It was my moment. It was my moment to shine and to say, like, you know what? Like, what I said when I was 12 years old. And now I still have passion, and I still was like, not shaming how she taught, but looking at, you have to understand and change.
You have to change, because what you're not allowing is not fair.
That's right. And the student that we advocated for, like, after that too, like, they were crying, we were all crying, because it was just a very powerful, it was quiet in the room for a bit, right? Because there was I'm trying to have those teachers understand that the way of learning isn't the way they have to be open-minded and be okay with that, and figuring out, negotiating back and forth, like, did that work? Did didn't that work, right? And like that's what I think is creating that ongoing relationship within the school, right? We're all on the child's team as support.
And that meeting, I remember it vividly because it was very emotional.
Yeah.
There was very strong comments from the teacher about opposing it.
That's
but
right.
you also had really great, you really articulated well about why it had to be different. And I remember the mom started crying because she said, I've never had anyone explain it that well because that's what my son says to me at home.
Yeah.
And then everyone was quiet because there was a teacher, the principal, and I think the resource teacher.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, it was a lot of people's aha moments.
Yeah.
Because they finally got it.
Yeah.
And I remember at the end, Mom was crying. Like, she was like, I really, really hope that this has changed their thoughts. Because it seemed like it.
Yeah.
For them to be able to see it a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I full turnaround.
I got my chance.
Yeah. And how important that is for you too, right? Because you struggled with being able to say and find the right words.
I'd get so frustrated with myself saying like I can't say. I know in my head that what I want to say, and I'd always imagine what I would say, right? And then when I say it, it wouldn't come out, and that's where that word retrieval, right? With this like, and I still struggle with it, but I don't let that stop me from still trying to say what I have to say.
Yeah. I think at the end of this section, one of the things that I think is really important to note is when a student has to spend all their cognitive energy just getting through the format of a test, they have nothing left to show what they actually know. That's not an assessment. That's a barrier. And calling it standard doesn't make it fair. And I think there's a few points here, Kirsten, right? I think one of them is families. They keep coming back, like, why do families have to keep fighting for something the law already guarantees? We have families say, we've had these meetings, we've talked about these things, why is it not happening, and why do I have to fight for it every time? I've always said before in this podcast, I am sometimes leery about saying things to offend. And my intention is never that. What I find often, and what happens in meetings when we're advocating, is there's a lot of ego in the room. And the ego is that we are the educators, we are the ones who know what's happening, we are the ones who are making these decisions, and you are just the parents. That is a feeling that I often feel within some schools. And I'm not saying all, like I've been to a lot of great schools, but it does happen where parents, right, don't feel like they've been heard. And I really wish schools would put the ego and the arrogance aside and know that, please, we're all working for that student. Let's put our brains together and be the best that we all can be for that student, everything aside. And that we're not talking about the credentials you have or the alphabet soup behind your name. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how do we work together collaboratively in a respectful, kind way. And I think that always has to be first and foremost. How do we respect each other? Parents know a lot about their child. Educators can learn a lot from parents about what they're like at home, because often it's very different. And I think that is so important for educators to allow parents to have a voice and respect that voice, and please listen. Please listen. What would it look like if schools treated accommodations as a right from day one instead of something families have to beg for? We feel like that as families a lot, that we're begging you. Like I said, I had to convince them that this was something you needed. Please, schools, please don't make us beg. Please.
And it's tough. I think too, like,
as I'm begging to say, please don't make us beg.
But I don't know. I think it's, for me, like, I was dyslexic. I had a diagnosis. There was times we said no. What do we say to students, though, that don't have an assessment and don't have that? What would we do for them, right?
And I honestly, I always go back to parents saying, but I don't want to label, right? That's what ends up coming to me. And I try my hardest. Families, you guys do what you want to do when it comes to that. I cannot stress the importance of having that documentation. I've heard it often, schools saying, well, we don't need the assessment to be able to give you what you want. You are then at the schools can then say no when they want because there's no documentation proving that it was needed, right? And that there is no diagnosis there. I really, really advocate to parents the importance of getting a psychoeducational assessment for them to be able to have the rights to advocate. Because without that documentation, you just don't. And I've heard schools say, well, we never hold that against parents. I've seen differently.
And I think it's as early as grade 2.
Please. Psychologists need at least 2 grades. Kindergarten, grade 1, you can then go grade 2, beginning of grade 2, and a grade 2 to then go and get those assessments.
Accommodations are not a special treatment. They are removal of unfair barriers. Every student deserves to be assessed on what they know, not on how well they can work around a disability that has never been addressed.
The emotional cost of consistently having to prove your child deserves support. I think that's why I advocate so hard about getting that assessment, because at least you have a documentation that proves what it is your child needs, right? And gives you a basis of that. Because even with that document, it takes a toll.
That's right.
It's a lot of work. Advocacy fatigue. Year after year, my recommendation is always meet the school team in May and June for the next year. So we're meeting that new team, and they say, well, we do transition meetings June. Perfect. Can I be there? Because I would like to meet that teacher that they're going to have, right? So that you are doing it for the next year. You then the teacher coming in with that those accommodations are there when they walk in day 1. Then you meet October, November, December. How is that going? Did it work? What adjustments do we make, right? And then that's when I have the opportunity to get emails. Please, if you need help from me, I'm happy to help. Here's my email, here's my phone number, text me, whatever you need. I know you have a large class. I'm happy to help you with that. Then you're going again, right? October. Then you have a communication for the rest of the year. May and June, you're meeting the next year's team. So you're always setting up for success. It is important to have that consistency and for your team to know that's what you're going to be asking for. I think one of the things too is, what do you do when you have nothing left? I know we are right now in need of a vacation. What do you do when you have nothing left?
I think I'm doing a lot more trying to be grounded by being outside, trying to be one with nature.
That's always suited you. That really has.
We're wanting to do more hiking. We're wanting to be going swimming more. Just having fun. I think throughout the school year, it's very stressful. Appointments, tutoring, extracurriculars, sports. It's just a lot, and I think summer is a good time to calm the nervous system and try to restart.
Which is interesting because we say don't stop tutoring in the summer. Because you cannot sacrifice that learning.
That's
but
true.
We at least get a break from advocacy.
Yes.
Right? Like
that's
the
right.
advocacy, we can take a breather from that.
That's right.
And then one of the things that was asked, like, where do you go for support? Who advocates for the advocates? And we were talking about that, going, what do we do, like, to fill our cup? And it took me a moment. I wasn't sure. And I was like, no, wait a minute. That should be an easy one. I've chosen my family, my life, my friends, what I do outside of that. And that's what fills me, is the people that I'm surrounded by are very open-minded, helpful, kind, forgiving, right? Like all of those things. I've surrounded and specifically chosen people who support my crazy life, right? And give me peace. So I think you've done the same, and right, nature is something that also fills your cup.
And my pets.
That's
I
true.
love animals.
I think this is for you, Kirsten. There have been moments where you've wanted to stop, like stop advocating, stop. Like, what's kept you going, doing what we do?
I think it's the students who were in my position, and there's just no need to suffer like that. Like, I had a student, and we were always joking. He's like, thank you, Master Shifu. You know, and I'm like, thank you, you know, like, and I'm like, I'm gonna give you all of my knowledge, you know, and I think that that's where that's also what fills my cup, I think, is knowing that I am passing on my hard work and the things that I've had to learn. I'm like, this is to make it a little bit easier for you, but they're going to have their own challenges because, you know, again, it was for me to learn, it was a little later in the game. I have a lot of younger kids now that are advocating, and I'm so proud of them for standing up and having a voice so young. And that's just kind of passing that on to the next generation, because learning never ends. Like,
that's for sure.
Education never ends. I'm always learning from them, to be honest.
And I think ending this off, right? If you're sitting at a table right now where no one is listening, we want you to know you are not imagining it. The system is hard. It was not built for everyone, but you are not the first person to be where you are, and you are not alone. Every person in this space has had a moment where they didn't think they could keep going, and every one of them did. And some of them are the reason we're sitting here today.
Thank you so much for joining today at KC Cafe Podcast. If these conversations resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this with someone that needs to hear it. We'll be back next week to dive in more with you. Bye.